Okay, today we begin with a question that echoes quietly in the background of many lives, often unnoticed, yet deeply familiar. Why does this keep happening to me? Why do we find ourselves returning to the same situations, circling around the same emotional landscapes, drawn to the same types of people who wound us in familiar ways? Why do certain challenges repeat not just once, but again and again, as if life were gently, or sometimes not so gently, insisting that we pay attention? You might call it coincidence, or perhaps misfortune, but across cultures and over centuries, others have offered a deeper explanation. In the spiritual traditions of India and Tibet, it is known as karma, a complex network of cause and effect, where each action leaves a subtle imprint on the soul. These imprints, called samskars, shape not only who we are, but what returns to us. They are the patterns that bind us to lessons not yet learned. But in the West, the Stoic philosophers approached this repetition from another angle. They didn't use the language of karma, yet they spoke of fate, of logos, of a divine order that governs the unfolding of all things. To them, when life brings you again to the same place, it is not punishment, it is providence. It is a sign that something essential within you is being summoned to grow, to see more clearly, to respond differently. So while one tradition might ask, what did I do in a past life to deserve this? The Stoic asks, what can I do right now to rise to this moment? Instead of seeing repetition as a burden, the Stoic sees it as a kind of quiet invitation, an opportunity to act, not from fear or habit, but from reason, virtue, and inner clarity. This video is not about cleansing your karma through ritual or mysticism, nor is it about passively accepting whatever happens to you. It is about something far more grounded and perhaps more difficult. It is about learning how to repay your karmic debts, not with guilt or desperation, but with steadiness, with honor, and above all, with consciousness. In the face of life's most persistent lessons, Stoicism invites us to trade self-pity for perspective, blame for responsibility, and reaction for reflection. Together, we'll explore what this means in the real world, in small daily choices, in history's greatest philosophical teachings, and in the forgotten rituals of ancient cultures who understood, in their own way, that every action either binds us tighter to the wheel of suffering or helps us gently step off it. This is a journey, not of escape, but of return, a return to wisdom, to discernment, and to inner freedom. We begin not by turning away from the problem, but by turning toward it with open eyes and a steady heart. Let's begin with the simplest of things. How you drink your coffee, how you speak when frustrated, how you treat the ordinary patterns of your life. Because karma, as it turns out, doesn't begin in past lives. It begins here, in this moment, right now. Imagine you're walking down the street on a weekday morning. Your thoughts are cluttered, your schedule is tight, and the city moves around you in hurried and different patterns. Suddenly, someone bumps into you, spilling your coffee. It's a small moment, a common annoyance. But what you do next, how you react, is not small at all. Whether you explode in anger, silently seethe, or take a breath and move on, that moment becomes the entire shape of your karma. In the Stoic worldview, it is not the incident itself that matters. It is your judgment of it, your inner framing, your chosen response. It's not things that upset us, wrote Epictetus, but our judgments about things. This is more than clever philosophy. It is a manual for karmic disengagement. What seems external, a bad driver, a missed opportunity, a frustrating colleague, is often just the world offering you another chance to choose differently. Modern spirituality tends to associate karma with past lives or cosmic justice. But what if karma isn't a punishment or a reward from a distant past? What if it's a mirror held up to your present self? Stoicism suggests that patterns repeat, not because fate is cruel, but because you haven't yet mastered the inner discipline required to respond with integrity instead of instinct. When anger keeps returning, it isn't life that's repeating, it's you. Think of the person who always suspects others' intentions, no matter where they go, whom they meet, or how fortunate their circumstances. Distrust follows them like a shadow. That is karmic residue in motion, not because someone cursed them, but because the lens through which they view the world remains unchanged. Karma, through this lens, is not fate imposed upon you, it is a cycle sustained by you. The Stoics spoke of prohairesis, a word that roughly translates to moral will or the power of choice. No matter what the external world does to you, they said, this internal power cannot be taken. You are always free to choose your response. In this, Stoicism becomes a toolkit for karmic accountability, because karma is not merely about what happens to you. It is about what you do with what happens. Let's return to that coffee spilling moment. Most people would say it's natural to get angry, and perhaps it is, but the Stoic would ask, is it necessary? Does it serve you? Or is it just a habit? And if it is merely habit, then what you call natural may, in fact, be your deepest karmic loop. A cycle of unconscious reaction masquerading as personality. Every morning offers 100 such opportunities to observe this loop. You might get irritated when your partner forgets something you said. You might sigh with resentment when traffic stalls your routine. You might feel invisible when someone interrupts you. These moments sting because they feel personal. But the Stoic practice of dichotomy of control reminds us, what others do is not up to you. What you do in response, that is yours alone. This is where karma becomes tangible, because once you recognize the pattern and still repeat it, your responsibility deepens. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, often reminded himself in his journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Notice the phrasing, realize this. It's not about changing the world, but about awakening within it. The person who practices Stoicism begins to move through life like someone navigating a labyrinth with a thread in hand. Every interaction, every emotion becomes a chance to track the thread to see where it tightens, where it pulls, where it traps. And gradually, the maze begins to open. Karma, too, begins to loosen, not because life changes, but because the person walking through it there's a subtle, often overlooked point here. Karma and fate are not enemies of free will. They are invitations for free will to become conscious. The Stoics didn't deny hardship. They lived in times of plagues, wars, exile, and betrayal. But they insisted that hardship was not the enemy. Unpreparedness was. Epictetus, born a slave, crippled in youth, and denied every comfort of social rank, didn't ask why life had been unfair to him. He asked, "What must I learn from this?" That shift from complaint to inquiry is the pivot that breaks karma. There's also something humbling in this. Karma isn't lurking in mysterious corners of your past. It's sitting at the breakfast table with you. It's in how you speak when you're tired, how you react when criticized, how you behave when no one's watching. Stoicism teaches that character is not built in heroic acts, it's built in everyday decisions, especially the ones that feel too small to matter. When someone lies to you, do you respond with vengefulness or with discernment? When you're embarrassed, do you lash out or do you breathe and stay present? When life closes one door, do you wallow in entitlement or quietly find another path? These are not just moral choices. They are karmic choices. Every one of them either reinforces the loop or dissolves it. In a world that often demands reactivity, the Stoic becomes a quiet rebel. They pause where others rush. They inquire where others assume. They forgive where others resent, not because it's easier, but because it is the only path to inner freedom. To repay karma, in the Stoic sense, is not to suffer for the past, but to act rightly in the present. It is not to cleanse your soul through rituals, but to discipline your mind through reflection. The beauty of this practice is that it requires no guru, no incense, no sacred texts. You begin exactly where you are. In the moment you notice your impatience, in the moment you resist the urge to complain, in the moment you choose integrity over convenience. These are the true fire rituals of the Stoic path, internal, invisible, but transformative. And when these moments begin to add up, you may notice something quietly miraculous. The situations no longer trigger you. The patterns no longer ensnare you. The faces of your enemies lose their menace. Life becomes less a battlefield, more a classroom. Karma, at last, has been repaid, not through submission, but through sovereignty. But before any of that can happen, before the karmic cycle can be altered, one must first become aware of it. That awareness begins, not in theory, but in the fabric of daily life. It begins in the ordinary. The spilled coffee, the tone of your voice, the reaction you almost had, but chose not to. So the next time something irritates you, pause, not to suppress the feeling, but to examine it. Ask yourself, is this a response rooted in old habit, or is this a chance to choose differently? That small pause is the hinge upon which the wheel of karma turns. Let us now step away from the daily street corner and into the pages of history, because while karma may begin in our reactions, it is in our understanding of its origins that we find the power to transform it. What did ancient civilizations believe about these patterns? How did great minds across cultures describe the cycles of action and consequence? And what hidden discoveries have reminded us that we are not the first to wrestle with these invisible debts? Long before karma became a buzzword in modern spirituality, it was a sacred code etched into the rituals and philosophies of ancient India. In the Vedic tradition, texts believed to have been composed as early as 5th BCE. Karma was not a punishment system. It was a mechanism of moral refinement. Each action, word, or even thought was said to leave behind a subtle impression, known as a. These impressions form grooves in the consciousness, gently guiding one's future behavior, and eventually, the circumstances of one's life. To the ancient rishis, life was not linear, it was cyclical. Birth, death, rebirth, pleasure, suffering, and then again, pleasure. The cycle continued until one saw clearly enough to act without attachment, without selfish desire. That, they believed, was the key to liberation, not escape from the world, but freedom from compulsive reaction. In this, the early Vedic view aligned surprisingly well with Stoic thought. Even though the two traditions evolved continents apart, the Stoics did not speak of reincarnation or samskaras, but they understood deeply that habits shape destiny. They believed the soul was not static but capable of being trained like a muscle. Like a moral compass refined through hardship, Their term for this shaping force was logos, a divine reason that ordered the universe, not just physically, but ethically. To live in harmony with the logos was to live wisely, and to live wisely was to break free from suffering caused by blind attachment to pleasure or fear. This view was not abstract for the Stoics. It was tested in the lives of those who practiced it. Perhaps no one embodied this more than Epictetus, born into slavery in the Roman Empire, sometime around 55 CE. According to some sources, broke his leg so violently that Epictetus walked with a limp for the rest of his life. Yet, when asked about it, years later, Epictetus merely shrugged and said, "Did I complain? No. I just accepted it as part of the order of things." Epictetus taught that suffering was not optional, but misery was. One cannot always control what happens, but one can always control how one relates to it. "You may fetter my leg," he told his students, "but not even Zeus has power over my mind." In this, he mirrored the karma yoga of the Bhagavad Gita action, without attachment, to result a teaching spoken by Krishna on the battlefield of duty, and practiced by Stoics in the daily battlefield of Roman life. And yet, astonishingly, these two traditions, Vedic and Stoic, seem to have discovered the same moral terrain. Though they arrived from opposite directions, one focused on liberation through inner detachment, the other on virtue through disciplined reason. But both agreed. True peace does not come from avoiding hardship. It comes from facing it, using it as a mirror, and refusing to let it shape you unconsciously. A curious historical connection deepens this mystery. In 1892, archaeologists in what is now modern-day Turkey unearthed a stone tablet inscribed with a fragment attributed to Cleanthes, a disciple of Zeno, the founder of Stoicism. In it, Cleanthes praised the divine order of the universe, urging the wise to love fate not merely as an unavoidable fact, but as a personal teacher. "Lead me, Zeus, and destiny, wherever you have assigned me." The fragment read, "I will follow without hesitation." Remarkably, this mirrors the very essence of karma yoga, the discipline of action without attachment. In the Bhagavad Gita, composed centuries earlier, Krishna advises Arjuna, "Set thy heart upon thy work, but never on its reward. Work not for a reward, but never cease to do thy work." The Stoics and the yogis, though separated by vast lands and languages, arrived at the same luminous insight. That inner freedom comes from right action, performed with detachment, not from the success or failure that may follow. Some Indian scholars of the late 19th century, fascinated by the Greek parallels to Vedic thought, proposed a theory that perhaps traders or thinkers carried these ideas across the ancient world, possibly along the Silk Road or through early Persian intermediaries. There's little hard evidence, but the similarities remain intriguing. Two traditions born in the ash of different fires, both saying, "Do not fight your fate, use it, serve it, and become free by walking straight into it." There's something deeply comforting about this convergence. It suggests that wisdom is not the property of one people or one path. It is something humanity discovers again and again, like a mountain glimpsed from many directions, always pointing to the same summit. Whether you call it karma or fate, samskara or habit, dharma or virtue, the instruction is the same. Live deliberately. Do not sleepwalk through patterns. See, choose, transform. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor who ruled Rome during its turbulent years, echoed this sentiment in his meditations. "Accept whatever comes woven in the pattern of your destiny," he wrote, "for what could more aptly fit your needs?" He did not say this from the comfort of luxury. He buried children, endured plague, led wars, and governed a fractured empire. And yet, his journal reads like a meditation manual. Got calm, inward, lucid. Both Marcus and Krishna, Epictetus and the Vedic rishis, taught a radical idea. That pain is not the enemy, it is the curriculum, and karma is not the sentence, it is the repetition of lessons not yet learned. Suffering circles back until insight dawns. Fate knocks until character answers. And each time you respond with awareness instead of reaction, the loop begins to weaken. That, the Stoics would say, is how you repay fate. It's worth asking here. Why do these teachings matter today? Why trace old footsteps across ancient empires and dusty scriptures? Because the problems we face, grief, loss, fear, repetition, are not new. They are perennial. And if people, thousands of years ago, living without electricity or therapy or smartphones, could walk into suffering with grace, maybe we can, too. And what is the Stoic response when karma reappears as that same difficult person or that same painful pattern? It is to say, "Good a chance to practice." This was the phrase used often by Seneca and later echoed by Marcus Aurelius. A chance to practice forgiveness, to build inner calm, to choose differently. Karma, then, is not your enemy. It is your gym. It is the return of the same so you can become someone different. The greatest repayment of karma is not avoidance or escape. It is to become the person who no longer perpetuates the cycle. The person who sees the flame but no longer flinches. The person who walks in to challenge, not to suffer, but to serve. And that kind of person does not need to fear the past or or beg for redemption. They become redemption through every mindful act, every quiet choice, every moment they meet life, not as a victim, but as a student of providence. Now, as we move deeper into this exploration, let us leave the dusty scrolls and prison cells and step into a more mysterious realm: rituals, symbols, and sacred gestures. Because long before psychology named these patterns, cultures across the world had already sensed them, and they created beautiful, often strange, ceremonies to release them. So what did ancient people do when faced with recurring suffering? What were the forgotten arts of karmic cleansing? And why do so many of these rites, despite cultural separation, look strangely alike? Long before modern psychology gave us the language of trauma loops or behavioral cycles, ancient cultures were already performing quiet acts of release. They didn't need a therapist to tell them what was stuck there, and more importantly, they did something about it. Not in words, but in ritual. Through fire, through water, through symbolic acts of letting go. The patterns were different, but the impulse was universal. If life keeps repeating, perhaps we must learn to pause and offer something back. In Japan, there is a ceremony known as Ningyo Kyowa, memorial ritual for dolls. On the surface, it may seem strange. People bring old, beloved dolls often worn or no longer used and offer them to temples for purification and ceremonial burning or floating. But beneath the surface lies a deep karmic logic. These dolls, often said to carry the emotions and experiences of their owners, are not thrown away like trash. They are released, as if to say, "Thank you. Your work is done. You may return to the elements now." It is not the doll that is being cleansed, it is the person's history with it. Anthropologists have noted the emotional relief people often describe after such rituals, not because something supernatural occurred, but because something internal was honored. A relationship was closed. A thread was cut gently. Not with force, in that sense. The ceremony functions like a karmic punctuation mark, an intentional period placed at the end of a sentence that might otherwise have run on indefinitely. This instinct appears across the world. In ancient Greece, the practice of catharsis literary purification was often linked to drama, but it had older roots in communal rituals of cleansing. During certain festivals, citizens would gather to purge misfortune and unclean energies, both metaphorically and physically. Some cities would symbolically expel a scapegoat, called the pharmakos, representing collective impurity. While the ethics of such acts were later questioned, the underlying principle remains relevant: the recognition that pain, if unacknowledged, circulates. It lingers. And societies, just like individuals, need ways to reset the cycle. In Persia, in Mesopotamia, in Egypt, and among the indigenous cultures of the Americas, similar rituals existed. Burning written regrets, fasting to purify the spirit, burying objects of sorrow. Even the annual flood of the Nile in ancient Egypt was understood not just as a natural event, but a kind of symbolic reset. Each year, order was re-established not just in fields and farms, but in the soul of the civilization itself. What's mysterious is how many of these rituals, developed in isolation across continents, share similar themes: fire, letting go, symbolic objects, communal witnessing. And none of them relied on the idea of punishment. These were not rituals to beg for mercy from angry gods. They were offerings of awareness. They were acts of acknowledgement, as if to say, yes, this hurt happened. Yes, this pattern has followed me. But I see it now. I release it now. I return it to the flow. The Stoics, of course, did not conduct such ceremonies. Their temples were inward. Their altars were the pages of journals, and their incense was silence and reason. But they, too, understood the importance of ritual, not of religion, but of internal rhythm. Seneca advised writing every night about the day's events, not to dwell, but to cleanse. Marcus Aurelius began his mornings with philosophical affirmations, not to impress others, but to reset his state of mind. And most notably, they practiced what we now call premeditatio malorum, the visualization of the worst-case scenario. Before undertaking a task or entering a situation, the Stoic would calmly imagine everything that could go wrong: insult, failure, loss. Not to become pessimistic, but to prepare the mind, to diffuse the shock, to make peace with the river of fate before stepping into it. This was not negative thinking. It was ritual thinking, a spiritual rehearsal to cleanse the reactive mind before the karmic moment even arrives. What all these practices, East and West, ancient and modern, seem to recognize is this: karma persists in unconsciousness. The longer we ignore the past, the longer it drives us. The more we suppress what is unhealed, the more it repeats. These rituals, whether they involve water or ink or imagination, are about pausing long enough to face what we usually flee from. They are about bringing the unseen back into view and saying, "I see you. I will no longer feed you." One of the great unsolved mysteries in cultural anthropology is why so many of these karmic rituals emerged independently. The doll burning of Japan, the scapegoat expulsions of Greece, the fire festivals of the Celts, the lament songs of Balkan mothers. There is little evidence that these practices were traded or spread across empires. And yet, here they are strikingly similar in theme, in tone, in timing, almost as if the human psyche, across ages, remembers something essential about karmic release and tries again and again to symbolically act it out. Some scholars suggest that ritual is simply a form of primitive psychology. Others believe it's a way to encode social norms into collective memory. But the Stoic might offer a different view. Ritual is a way for the soul to realign with reason. It is a pause inserted into the rush of life, a moment when the individual stops reacting and starts reflecting. When the finger pointing outward turns inward. When history is not repeated, but rewritten softly, slowly, with attention. What matters most in all of this is intention. Ritual without presence is just theater. But when performed with sincerity, even the smallest gesture becomes transformative. Writing down a regret and burning it. Breathing deeply before answering a provocation. Apologizing sincerely to someone long forgotten. These are not grand acts, but they carry the weight of centuries. They echo with the same purpose as the Vedic fire offerings or the Stoic meditations. To interrupt the pattern, to remind the soul, you are not a victim of this cycle. You are its participant, and you can stop dancing anytime. Perhaps the most sacred ritual is not public at all. It is the moment you see yourself clearly without judgment, without pride, and choose differently. That, the Stoics would say, is how you practice philosophy, and that, the Vedic sages would say, is how you burn karma. So the question becomes, in our modern world, without temples or sacred rivers, how do we create space for this kind of clarity? How do we interrupt our cycles without needing to escape to a monastery or retreat? The answer may be simpler than we think. You don't need a formal ritual to cleanse karma. You just need a ritual of attention, a repeated act that says, I am here. I am awake. I am willing to meet this moment without illusion. This brings us to the present hour world, where karma no longer wears the robes of ancient gods or rises in temple smoke, where it meets us in emails, in family tensions, in public spaces, and where the responsibility to break the loop has never been more personal or more powerful. In the next segment, we explore exactly this. How to repay karma, not through sacred fire, but through small, wise actions embedded in daily modern life. We'll look at practices anyone can adopt, not as followers of a doctrine, but as sovereign beings reclaiming their agency, because karma doesn't demand you be perfect. It only asks you to pay attention. You don't need to walk into a temple to begin repaying karma. You don't need to chant mantras, burn incense, or read ancient texts. In Stoic philosophy, karma begins right where you are. In the car when someone cuts you off, in the grocery line when it's moving too slow, in that moment when someone's words trigger you. Karma is not some invisible punishment system in the sky. It's not a scorecard. It's a mirror, and that mirror reflects your internal posture in the middle of the ordinary. Imagine someone sends you a rude email. You feel heat rise in your chest. Your hands hover over the keyboard, already drafting your reply. This is karma, not the email itself, but the charge inside you. That discomfort is the place where patterns live. Do you respond from habit, or do you meet the moment with awareness? The Stoics called this choice prohairesis to moral will. It is the space between impulse and action, and that's where karma is repaid. Not in rituals, but in restraint. In choosing not to continue the cycle. Forgiveness becomes a karmic offering, not because the other person deserves it, but because you deserve peace. This is how you loosen the thread. These tiny acts of awareness are what we might call invisible victories. No audience, no reward, just an internal shift. And over time, they change everything. The beauty of this kind of practice is that it doesn't ask for ideal conditions. You don't need silence. You don't need to retreat to the mountains. You just need to be awake. When life presses on your patience, that's not a mistake. That's your training. Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor and student of Stoicism, wrote, "You must build your life action by action and be content if each brings its own end." He wrote this not from comfort, but in camps of war, among disease and betrayal. He was speaking to himself, reminding his own soul that peace is found in the process, not the outcome. He knew what modern minds forget, that wholeness is made from how you meet each moment. That karma is not about what happens to you, but how you respond again and again. Let's make this concrete. Your morning begins. You feel tired. Your thoughts start racing. The notifications arrive. The day pulls you into motion. This is your first karmic moment. What if you didn't meet it with autopilot? What if you paused, even for a breath, and whispered, "Today, I will act, not react"? That single moment alters the direction of your day. You are no longer a passenger in your karma. You become an active participant in your own transformation. That is the beginning of change, not later, but now. The Stoics believed in grounding practice. One of their most powerful tools was journaling, not to vent, but to reflect, to see clearly. Each evening, you ask, where did I respond with integrity? Where did I stumble? This is not a tool for self. You begin to understand your patterns. you start to see where you are, still reacting from habit, and where you are slowly choosing from wisdom instead. This isn't spiritual idealism. It's practical clarity. It's how you shape the soul. You cannot undo past karma, but you can interrupt future karma by meeting life differently today. When someone disrespects you and you don't react, karma shifts. When you're tired but speak gently, anyway, you've broken a loop. These are the moments where karma is transformed. They're not glamorous, no one may notice, but they are sacred, and they matter, especially in a world filled with noise, conflict, and distraction. Modern life gives you hundreds of opportunities each day to react. The Stoic path invites you to meet each one with awareness. There's a quiet paradox here. Karma is not paid by guilt. It's paid by presence. The moment you say, "I will no longer act from habit," is the moment a new life begins. You can start with 3 simple practices. First, pause before you respond. Ask, what part of me wants to answer this way? Is that the part I trust? Second, shift from blame to ownership. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Try, what am I being asked to learn? This reframing changes karma from punishment to teacher. Third, act from values, not feelings. Your emotions will change, but your values, the principles you've chosen, can guide you. When you're unsure, ask, if I were calm and clear, what would I do right now? These choices build something solid inside. They create what the Stoics called a good character. Not because you're flawless, but because you're intentional. These daily decisions are not glamorous, but they are sacred. Each one is an offering to the life you are becoming. You don't need a title to live this way. You don't need to be a monk, a guru, or a philosopher. You just need to care about the way you show up, because karma, in the end, is not what's done to you. It's what flows through you. When anger becomes compassion, karma is repaid. When fear becomes truth, karma is repaid. When judgment becomes understanding, karma is not only repaid, it is redeemed. These are the inner transactions that no one sees, but they shape the quality of your being. There's a famous line from Marcus Aurelius: love only what befalls you. It is woven in the pattern of your destiny. He didn't write that lightly. He meant that even your pain, even your frustration, even the hard moments are part of your growth. You don't have to enjoy them, but you can choose to work with them. So when life brings you discomfort, instead of asking, why me? Ask, how can I meet this moment with integrity? That question is the turning point. And if you want a simple ritual to repay karma daily, try this. Each night, write down one moment where you got caught in an old pattern. Then, without judgment, write how your wisest self would respond. This isn't about perfection, it's about alignment. Then in the morning, say to yourself, I do not control what comes. I only control how I meet it. Let me meet it with dignity. Say it quietly. Say it with intention. That sentence is a seed. Over time, it becomes a life of peace. The day draws to a close. The sun, now softened by the horizon, casts a golden hush over everything it touches. There is no urgency here, only the quiet folding of light into shadow. A breeze brushes across the water. You breathe, and for a moment, time itself seems to pause. Perhaps that is what karma really wants from us. Not punishment, not guilt, but presence. A pause. A moment of clear seeing. Throughout this journey, we've walked alongside some of humanity's oldest philosophies, the sages of the Vedas, the Stoics of ancient Rome, the silent rituals of Greece, Japan, and Egypt. Each system, though clothed in different languages and symbols, gently gestures toward the same truth. That life does not repeat to punish us, but to awaken us. Karma is not a cosmic tally of sins. It is a cycle of chances, a spiral that bends towards the more aware we become, the less tightly it holds us. You've likely felt it in your own life. The same pattern reappearing in new forms. The same kind of hurt, dressed in different names. And while the mind often cries, why is this happening again? The soul whispers, something else entirely. You are ready to respond differently now. That is the doorway to freedom, not escape, but transformation. The Stoics never asked us to reject fate. Instead, they urged us to meet it with dignity. Marcus Aurelius, writing not from a peaceful garden but from the edge of battle, reminded himself to love whatever happens, not as surrender, but as alignment. What meets you in life is not random, it is tailored, like a sculptor's chisel shaping stone. To resist it is to harden. To accept it is to be carved into form. In this way, karma becomes not a chain, but a compass. Its repetition is a map, pointing not to what you deserve, but to what you need to see. And once you see it clearly, you are no longer a captive of it. You become its interpreter, its alchemist. So what, then, is karmic repayment in our modern age? It is not penance, it is not spiritual drama. It is the quiet art of doing the next thing well, of pausing before reacting, of choosing principle over pride, of loving the life that arrives even when it doesn't match your plans. Each time you shift from blame to ownership, each time you offer patience in place of reaction, you are untangling something ancient. You are ending a pattern not just for yourself, but perhaps for generations to come. You cannot rewrite the karma of yesterday, but you can write with more clarity today, and that, the Stoics would say, is more than enough. Thank you for walking this journey with us. See you in the next meditation.